when opportunity knocks at the door, don't say, blimey, I've still got my pajamas on. Say yes to stuff and it will take you interesting places.
We're clearly going through some...
Okay, I'm placing an order to sell short euro at 1.1826. Okay, order placed to sell short at 1.1826.
There is very clear evidence that globally, as the debt has gone up, interest rates have gone down. Now that's a pure association. There is no proof of causality. Central banks and governments are in this together. They're one wallet, and we cannot afford higher rates. It's as simple as that.
HSBC Steve Major saying central banks could discover challenges breaking up with their governments and financial markets. Cleveland Fed President Loretta Mester considering a shift in bond buying to put a lid on any potential sell-off, telling Bloomberg earlier this month the following: I can imagine wanting to shift to longer-term treasuries as we did during the Great Recession if we needed more accommodation. On this, Bloomberg's international economics and policy correspondent Mike McKee. Mike, this is one of the questions at the moment in the bond market. If we get a sell-off, does the Fed step in?
Well, it's a question of the bond market, but at the moment it's not really a question at the Fed. They're talking hypotheticals there. Remember, there are two kinds of questions here. One is what's good for short-term tactical trading on trading desks, and the other is what does the economy need? The Fed's looking at the latter. Here's what the trading desks are looking at. A 10-year note yield.
Okay, guys, position opened for euro. It's short position at 1.1826. Okay, we open position and let's see how far it will go.
Right now, and they could just start buying some longer maturity bonds to try to bring the long end down if it starts to go up. But do they need to do that? Well, take a look at mortgage rates. The 10-year note yield has popped up just a little bit, but mortgage rates, the 30-year average across the country, hadn't moved at all. Pretty much tells you that the effects on the economy are so small the Fed doesn't need to worry about it. Does the economy need help going forward? Well, jobless claims might suggest no today, but there's a lot of noise in that. They do fall by 55,000 and a 56,000 revision lower last week, but it's not a good news story. It's noise. California had been cleaning out its numbers, getting rid of fraud and extra filings, but at this point, they've given us accurate numbers, and we see a big drop. Still, 787,000 is a lot of people filing first-time claims, John.
Not pretty, Mike McKee. Not pretty. We talk about it every week. Michael McKee, thank you very much. Tom Kennedy from JP Morgan Private Bank joining us now. Tom, always fantastic to get you on the show. We're talking about those claims. You've said the peak pain is behind us. Can the concentrated pain that you identify and others too, can that persist, Tom?
Yeah, I think it can, John. Good morning. I think the concentrated pain is, you can look at it glass half full or glass half empty. We're glass half full relative to consensus on Wall Street. The concentration of pain, number one, allows stimulus to be targeted to the places where it's needed, but also it's remaining so far concentrated in sectors of the economy that are heavy on the labor market, but not necessarily heavy from a GDP perspective. The U.S. consumer is proving to be very resilient, John, and they are spending, but reallocating from leisure and hospitality spend into more bang for your buck sectors. Think real estate. Just the multipliers on GDP are higher there. So concentration to us is actually good. We want to keep it that way. But you're also hearing in my voice, John, where the stimulus is still necessary if this concentration remains.
And that could be dependent on what happens in the next couple of weeks, Tom. A subject of this program tomorrow with Bridgewater will be about the dispersion and divergence we've seen over the last 6 months, and whether over the next 6 months we could be set for some convergence. Tom, do you think we could be?
No, I don't think so, John. Every rock we try to turn over to see more broad-based and dispersed pain, it's really hard to see it. Again, the labor market's getting tons of attention there. John, we've been looking at where capital destruction has been happening and where it might happen in the future. So you could think households, corporates, small businesses. The household sector, John, how many people are showing you the delinquency chart and saying, oh, delinquency spiked, foreclosures are going to follow? The vast majority of those delinquency rises are forbearance. And JP Morgan's Q3 earnings just showed on our platform, almost half of the forbearance folks went away. And it's not because they were going to foreclose on their home. It's because they became current on their mortgage. So the trend is actually going the other way on the consumer. And I've heard you talk at numerous times what's happening in the corporate space. Defaults have largely peaked. They've been concentrated in retail and energy. And the way that the market is pricing is suggestive defaults are going to be back to historical averages in 2021.
The maturity profile has improved at a number of companies as well, pushing that debt, term of the debt profile out too, Tom. I just wonder, putting all this together, what's the market call for you now, Tom, and credit?
We're still pro-cyclically positioned. John, this is the same position we've had for the last 6 months, though. And it starts from the top down. Macro, we're more optimistic relative to consensus. This fear of further capital destruction is exaggerated, and risk premiums still look attractive. We're really looking to high yield and mostly the upper tier portion for yield enhancement and securitized credit.
What's exaggerated about it, Tom, when you look at what's playing out in Europe at the moment? The second wave, more restrictions, potentially a loss of momentum in the economic recovery. What's exaggerated about those concerns, do you think?
I think it's mostly just folks looking at stale data, to be quite honest. The SLUICE survey that people will quote to us and do it regularly in client conversations with me, and it's data from Q2. The market has moved, and the stimulus is flowing through the economy, and the reopening process has happened considerably over that time. And I think the exaggeration is like, oh, it's just going to come in the future. But to your point, access to liquidity, access to capital is there. So there's no real reason to believe that we're going to fall off a default cliff. And I think all the evidence we're seeing since Q2 suggests that to be the case going forward. And John, make it even simpler, right? In the housing market, why are you going to default on your mortgage if you could just sell your house at 10 to 12% higher than what you could have this time last year? It'd be a very odd thing to see.
Well, it depends where you live, of course. But Tom, so far at least, you've been constructive and you've been right. I found myself, heard myself said that a few times every time you and I have spoke over the last 6 months or so. Tom there of JP Morgan Private Bank, thank you. Coming up next, the market moving events you need to be watching in our trading diary, right here on Bloomberg.
The Boston Symphony Orchestra presents BSO at Home. While you stay inside, enjoy a curated collection of archived concerts and behind-the-scenes stories from BSO musicians. BSO Homeschool provides lessons for music lovers of all ages. New performances and messages from musicians are added regularly. Enjoy these selections and much more at bso.org/at-home.
What is happening today in India is actually a determination to rebuild our economy.
India has an opportunity not only competing in the space of the factory of the world, but a very big opportunity to compete in being the office of the world.
Their CPG history, their experience, and really how we might be able to combine together to really create this fantastic public company. And so we kind of got into the SPAC thing a little bit before it became such a hot method of going public.
Market with a lift up 1/3%, 25 minutes in. Here's your trading diary. What you need to be watching through the week. At the top of the hour, existing home sales. Fed presidents Barkin daily discussing the economy and the pandemic at 1 p.m. Eastern. Intel reporting results after the close. At 9 p.m. is the main event. Talked about it all morning. The last presidential debate from Nashville, Tennessee. And finally, Friday, market PMIs in the United States and in Europe too. From London and New York, that does it for us. Coming up tomorrow, do not miss this. What a lineup. Larry Kudlow from the White House, Bob Prince of Bridgewater, Mohammed Al-Arian, and Hugh Hendry. A lot of macro thoughts out there, and I cannot wait to bring you that program tomorrow. This was the Countdown to the Open. Catch me on Twitter at Ferro TV. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Best, your weekly review of the most important business news, analysis, and interviews from Bloomberg Television around the world.
Ken Burns, welcome to Bloomberg Big Decisions.
We have always been a mixture of things. We are always stronger for that mixture.
Growth is a way to stay competitive, delight more and more consumers.
Welcome to the Best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang.
They've moved the needle by acknowledging that they have to monitor the content.
What is one word of advice you'll take with you?
Learn how to listen. And that is certainly something that has served me well.
Ankiti, where do you go from here?
It's a huge market. It's a huge opportunity. I want to go 100x from here.
Our philosophy is to partner where we can and stand apart when we should.
It's such an interesting new world.
The world is changing.
For us, it's not about being first. It's about being the best.
While everyone is zigging, we're zagging.
We feel like we can maybe help people out more.
We have an enormous number of big ideas.
This has so entangled itself into our social fabric and into our social status pipelines and into the development of children that even if you opt out, that's not enough.
Months after Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico is still in peril. Huge swaths of the island are still without power, running water, or access to medical care. Experts estimate that it will take years before these services are restored island-wide. Much of the blame has been placed on FEMA for a slow response in comparison to recent disasters on the mainland. But recovery from a disaster of this complexity and scale has proven more challenging than anyone anticipated. And filling the gaps between an overextended public sector and a suffering populace falls on the private citizens. Robert Anderson is a Puerto Rico resident of 4 years.
The eye of the storm came in south of El Yunque, swept up towards San Juan, and out to Arecibo. Everything on the right-hand side is what we call the dirty side of the storm.
This isn't his first time in a disaster zone. With a military and telecom background, Anderson worked on repairing damaged cell phone towers in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Some might be tempted to label him a disaster capitalist, seeking lucrative government contracts for his expertise. But as Anderson finds himself in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, he and his associates are developing a variety of pro bono recovery projects that target the island's hardest-hit areas.
I see two Puerto Ricos. We're here in San Juan. They have telecommunications restored. They may or may not have power, but basic services are in place. They're able to get food. They're able to buy things. They're surviving. And when you look outside of the San Juan area, you can go 15 minutes from here and find areas that are devastated. I'm working on the devastated side.
Today, he's put together a boots-on-the-ground mission to provide medical care to some of the island's most isolated and vulnerable residents. Steve Berenbaum is one of Anderson's business associates. He offered an extra car and a set of hands.
So we received an initial report from a nurse that was out in the area. We're headed to the northeast region of Utuado for some people that are in need of urgent medical assistance.
Dr. Sally Priester is a physician from San Juan. She filled a van with medical supplies at her own expense and brought along a team of nurses. Google Maps estimated our first destination to be a 90-minute drive. But it didn't account for obstacles like this. Our first stop was the home of an 82-year-old blind Vietnam veteran. His roof was blown off by the storm, and he's been living alone in a back shed for nearly 2 months.
His cane actually got broken in the storm, so he's limited mobility. He has a number of medical ailments. Dr. Priester's having a look into him. We called the VA. They're going to get him set up with what he needs, get him stabilized so he can then be transported either to an evacuation center or off the island. It's when the chain gets broken, when those families that are connected to them leave the island or take off, these guys get left at the end of the road, and it's tough.
FEMA was not officially part of Robert's team, and their arrival caught everyone by surprise. Their job here was to survey and report back to their superiors, and did not come with medical aid of any kind.
People think that FEMA is there to hand out bottles of water, and it's not what they do. FEMA has a role to play. They have a very specific role. They bring in ships, they bring in airplanes, they bring in tractor trailers with pallets of things. But they're a big machine, and there's gaps in that thing. And you're seeing one of the gaps here, and we help fill that role. These guys are in a bad situation before, and now they're struggling for real basic things. One of the risks that you run is people going from fear to hopelessness. Those are the folks that we're trying to reach.
And how are they reached? How are they even found?
Word of mouth, mostly.
And what's your role in all this?
Ghost in the machine. I'm lucky enough to be able to communicate with folks in FEMA, the state of Puerto Rico.
For a ghost, Robert makes his presence well known. Not only was he the de facto leader of the mission, now with FEMA in tow, he created his own maps to survey storm damage.
So we're right here.
And delivered them to FEMA HQ free of charge.
I have pretty good reach.
Perhaps that's how he managed to earn himself a coveted FEMA badge without actually working for them. And it's these relationships that allow him to operate more efficiently than an NGO or a government agency.
We're able to resolve problems at a different level.
Our next stop was on a mountaintop, a family of 11 struggling to care for their special needs brother in what was left of their house.
Probably we are the first health team to come and visit this family.
Muy bien, todo muy bien.
The patient has Down syndrome. He is all day in bed. The difficulty with this is the patient cannot be alone. The most important thing is that you need to take care of the chronic disease besides disability, because they have been not going to a doctor, and no doctor has come in here yet.
So we need a refill of this medication.
After maybe 54 days, it's not getting better. And the only way that you can be able to see that is coming to the ground, drive, and see the people and talk to the people.
You can see San Juan from here, but you can't get there. It's like the Emerald City.
On this stop, we caught word that a man living alone at the edge of the jungle was in need of care.
So we decided to take a little detour, come up here and check out and see what's going on. One of the challenges is to find those people that are at the end of these roads that need help.
¿Pero por qué estás solo? ¿Por qué estás por acá tan solo? I'm asking about why he's alone right here. He said things of life happens. Yeah, I'm here by myself. So ¿dónde vive acá? En la parte de...
This is not a job. To do this, you need to have passion for what you can do. You're not going to get paid.
It's said in disaster response and emergency response that the real first responders are your neighbors. You don't need to wait for a lucrative FEMA contract to go out and do good and to help the community.
In the end, do you feel like you're making a difference?
Lives you touch and people that you can affect. I don't really think about it in those terms.
But why do you do it?
It helps me sleep at night. I think it's as much for the people that are going out to help and do things as it is for the people that you affect.
Whether out of altruism, or the lure of a paid gig, or some mixture of the two, Anderson hopes to stay here to help shape Puerto Rico's future.
Puerto Rico's essentially been a colony for 400 years. It was treated poorly by the Spanish. It was not treated well by the United States when they first got here. Puerto Rico can continue in the way that it's always been, or Puerto Rico can rebuild itself like nothing that's ever been. And we have to do everything we can to make that real. That's the bottom line.
When I met him first online, I found him to be really sweet. I think I was the one who was talking for an hour. He was just listening.
When we met, I saw her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, which was, something that I was looking for.
Anshu and Sumit are one of about 12 million couples that get married in India every year. Unlike their parents' generation, they're not from two close villages, but from two cities on opposite sides of the country. And their love didn't start through community matchmaking, marriage brokers, or classified ads in newspapers, but began online.
So we met through jeevansathi.com. So it's basically an online portal where we have detailed profile of different grooms and brides.
It makes a lot of remote profiles who are located in distant areas more accessible.
Thanks to growing internet and smartphone usage, matrimony websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more people are finding their partners at the click of a mouse. jeevansathi.com, where Anshu and Sumit met, is one of the biggest players. Young Indians looking for love set up profiles including their caste and horoscope, but their criteria for choosing spouses appears to be changing.
We have seen the shift from traditional caste community conservative parameters to something like which is more focused on education, employment.
Anshu and Sumit's marriage was initiated by their parents, but modern Indian couples like them have more input than previous generations.
We looked up to them to agree for the proposal, but it was primarily our decision that we wanted to be with each other.
So what's the emoji like you use the most to send to each other?
There's a bear which basically we use for indicating a hug.
Yeah, that's our language basically. Bear icon for a hug.
Time flies when you're in love, and just 1.5 months after they first met online, the couple got engaged. They decided to hold their wedding less than 3 months later. But planning a traditional Hindu wedding on such short notice is no easy task. The massive event usually lasts 3 days, has various ceremonies and celebrations, and involves the entire two families and hundreds of guests. Luckily, there are websites and apps for that.
We searched online, we got in touch with Wedding Brigade, and they helped us finalize the venue. And it makes the search faster and efficient.
Startups like the Wedding Brigade are challenging traditional wedding planners in this $50 billion industry. It provides various services from booking banquet venues to buying wedding gowns. The website makes money by charging commission from vendors.
People don't want to be limited to what is available around them. They want to know the entire range of options available before making a decision. And now it's easy to find almost everything on one portal.
Anshu and Sumit are officially married in a ritual that has gone on for thousands of years, but their love started in a very new way. Technologies might be changing the way couples meet, date, and get married in India, but they're definitely not changing everything.
The technology was only the first level help that we could get to find each other. Everything else was like very humanly and emotions and feelings based.
Okay, guys, I'm placing a stop on profit for euro at 118.24. Stop on profit place at 118.24.
Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren has become a symbol of everything the Republican Party stands against.
Everyone gets a right to basic health care. We need strong oversight of these banks.
A legal scholar and a consumer advocate turned politician, Warren has branded herself as a champion of the working class and made a career out of standing up to big business. While rumors of a 2020 presidency bid remain just that,
I'm not running for president.
her Senate seat is up for re-election in 2018, and Republicans are already pumping millions into super PACs to defeat her. This is the story of how a law professor and politician came to be seen as the biggest threat to Republican values and the greatest hope for progressive America. Elizabeth Warren was born Elizabeth Ann Herron, the youngest of three siblings, on June 22, 1949 in Oklahoma City to middle-class parents. After waiting tables to help her family pay the bills, Warren became a star on the high school debate team. She landed a scholarship to George Washington University at the age of 16, but 2 years later dropped out to marry her high school sweetheart, Jim Warren. By 1980, Warren was a mother of two, divorced and remarried, had earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Houston, a juris degree from Rutgers, and practicing law in New Jersey. Warren then went on to become an influential law professor, teaching, lecturing, and publishing highly cited work on bankruptcy and commercial law at 7 universities around the country, eventually settling at Harvard Law School. But Warren wasn't always a liberal lion.
Elizabeth Warren used to be a Republican, actually.
That's Stephen Dennis.
I'm a Senate reporter for Bloomberg. Around the time that Elizabeth Warren switched parties, she became a fierce opponent of a Republican drive to make it much harder to file for bankruptcy. She fought that for a decade. It ended up passing anyways.
While her efforts ultimately failed, her warning calls were heard in 2008.
We're in the midst of a serious financial crisis. Our entire economy is in danger, and without immediate action by Congress, America could slip into a financial panic, and a distressing scenario would unfold.
Professor Warren was tapped to help with oversight in the government bailout.
She would excoriate bankers and their bonuses and their practices.
Why should the U.S. taxpayer alone carry Citi?
She proposed a series of tough regulations, which became the basis for much of the Dodd-Frank financial law that we have today. That sort of catapulted her to national stardom, particularly among the progressive left.
Encouraged by her newfound notoriety, Warren declared her bid for the U.S. Senate on September 14, 2011. During the race, her opponent Scott Brown tried to derail Warren by accusing her of falsely claiming Native American heritage, a controversy that earned her the nickname Pocahontas. Nevertheless, she was victorious and won the Senate seat by a comfortable margin. She used her new tenure to challenge everyone, from banking regulators and Treasury officials to members of Wall Street and Congress.
I'm really concerned that too big to fail has become too big for trial. We need tough new laws to hold corporate executives personally accountable. No one should be above the law.
She called for Wells Fargo CEO John Stump to resign for fraud, introduced the Bank on Student Loans Fairness Act, and reintroduced the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act. In 2016, after staying silent during the Democratic...
Position closed on euro, as you can see, at 1.1824. We have a profit, £200.
Anything for anyone, and that is just one of the many reasons he will never be president of the United States.
But she was wrong.
The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer.
Warren wasted no time resisting Trump's agenda.
Have you ever managed or overseen a $1 trillion loan program?
I have not.
How about a $1 billion loan program?
I have not.
Okay.
In the Donald Trump era, Elizabeth Warren has been playing defense and trying to prevent Donald Trump and his cabinet appointees from rolling back protections that she helped enact.
Warren actually found herself rebuked by Mitch McConnell for reading a letter by Coretta Scott King about Jeff Sessions' record on racism during his confirmation.
She was warned. She was given an explanation. Nevertheless, she persisted.
That moment became something that's on T-shirts, bumper stickers, slogans, and that really galvanized a lot of support for her.